So, yes, I went to two different art schools, and the question is, do you think it was worth it? Hey, welcome back. This is Cetriya, Cetriya, and today I wanted to maybe give you three things to consider if you should go to art school and whether it's worth it. Typically, in these kind of videos, people tend to talk about the fact that art school is very expensive. But what is expensive? In all honesty, it is relative to how much you make and how much value you will receive from the education and if you can actually afford it. So, what is expensive to you may be pretty cheap to another person, or even if something is expensive to one person, the value of what they will receive is more than enough to make up for the price tag. So, I want to kind of dive into these three little things and in the midst of it, maybe distract you a little bit with some drawings. I will list a couple of alternatives towards the end and hopefully maybe produce a separate video that kind of talks about my experiences with these types of alternative education. So the thing that people talk about, and that is how expensive art school is. But in all honesty, I believe that college in America at least have really gotten to a point where it's just expensive all around, no matter what kind of major you're going to. Your best bet is perhaps going into a community college and hopefully get as much of the state scholarship that is provided to you. And oftentimes, for some odd reason, a lot of these community colleges are highly underfunded, having way too many students in it, and the quality of the education is not that great because even in colleges, they still do not pay the teachers all that well. Even for the schools that I went to, my art schools, they still did not I wouldn't say didn't pay them well, because it is a private school for both of them, so they did get paid pretty well, but more so the fact that, relatively speaking, they didn't get paid that much. In all honesty, the teachers would make more money if they did their classes independently from the school, and the student would have ended up paying a lot less. But yes, the thing about it is that school is more so very expensive because, one, most of us do not make enough money really right out of the gate after going to art school. And ironically, one of my teachers had mentioned to me, he looked right at me towards my graduation and said, "You know what? I'm not worried about you because you'll make it work." And it is kind of sad to say that I'm considered the lucky one, but when you consider the fact that I'm barely making $40,000 a year, and yet I am the lucky one. So imagine when you owe so much per school. Roughly, private art schools run anywhere, roughly I would say about $20,000 to $30,000 per term, not per year, and not after you paid all of your supplies. That is just for tuition. That's it. That does not include dorms, room and board. That does not include rent. That does not include food. That does not include your books, your art supplies, none of that. That is purely just the tuition. Will cost you anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 per term. And as the economy is what it is, and as there's a lot of people trying to just go to college in general, there's not enough scholarships to go around. Fortunately for me, I had maybe about 40% of my tuition paid through scholarships. So the remaining 60% was through loans. And not even, I actually had to pay roughly almost $700 a month because both of my scholarships and my the state government loans was not enough. And I was not about to go and get some random private loans. So I just huff it and puff it for those years, which comes to the other issue about it being so expensive. Considering the fact that I spent so much of my time trying to make ends meet to pay for the school and pay for my rent and pay for my supplies, I never really had time to really use the resources of the school. So going into my second point, and that is expense versus the education. In general, I would like to say that the education in both the art schools that I went to, which is both Ringling and SCAD, I would say for most people would be 50-50. I would say the quality of my education was higher because I really fought to get into the best rated professors and the rated professors that were closer in line to what I wanted to do going out of school, or closer in line in terms of character. There was a couple of teachers that I really didn't like their classes, not because the education was bad, but simply because that teacher was in an industry that I had no interest in, such as editorial illustration, illustration for magazines or advertisement, or versus going into, let's say, children's book illustration, which was another teacher's specialty. And in my case, when I was first going into art school, I was going for more like concept art, game art, and comics. And I made sure to try and get into the teachers that they had more experience geared towards that direction. Of course, at the end of it, I ended up changing what I wanted to do. But that's the thing about it. When you go to these major 4-year college schools, they could only teach you so much in that 4 years. And then the fact that a lot of the quality time that you could have spent training and practicing and doing more art, you had to spend going to a part-time job and doing freelance on the side and then doing some work study. Like, you spend all your extra time outside the classroom, which is actually the most quality time, because in school, you're just being given a critique. You're not actually per se practicing in the class hours. That's the only time you get to have feedback. That's the only time you get to talk to other students and brainstorm. That is the only time that you can go ahead and watch a demonstration from your teachers. After school or out of the class, that is when you should practice, but you're spending all of that time trying to pay your school while in school. And because of that, your education quality drastically goes down. Also, the tuition that you're paying covers not just your area of education, and unfortunately, certain departments are favored over others. In my second school, Ringling, illustration department was more respected because it was becoming such a large major, and it was also a major where a lot of the students would leave and go and win awards or be on public projects like films and video games and whatnot. So their name was, the name was published and was becoming well known. So my department ended up getting more of that money allocated to it. However, in my previous school, SCAD, the two departments, illustration and the comic sequential art department, did not really get as much favor as, say, the fashion department, because one of the owners of the school's favorite department was the fashion department. And you could really see that is where, even though collectively the school will gain a certain amount of tuition, they will just reallocate differently depending on the department. So you have that. Also, a lot of times you're not able to actually, not even, let's say, the different departments, the interdepartments, they do not really communicate as much. So there might be something really cool going on that may be beneficial to you, but because you're not registered in that major, you do not hear about it. So it's a lot of what you put in is what you get out. And that is another type of tip that you'll hear a lot of people talk about when it comes to going for higher education. And my point of view is, if I have to put that much in, I might as well do that much work without paying that kind of price tag. So for example, yes, my major was illustration, but there was a separate major for game design, and there was a separate major for computer animation, and there was a separate major for advertisement or motion design. But all of these majors could kind of interconnect with each other. Or there's a separate major for graphic design. So say I want to hear, I'll just give an example because he just recently gave a talk. Bobby Chu of Schoolism, one of the alternatives to art school, went and had a talk at Ringling, or went and had a talk at SCAD. But the illustration majors will not know that he's there, even though a lot of what he do is drawing and illustrate and make art. So right there, you're missing out, even though you're paying all of that kind of money in. So this is what would end up affecting for the quality of your education versus how expensive it is. You're putting not just your money, but you're putting in all of that time that you could have used to practice. Now, coming to the last and third point of why, even though I went to these two art schools, and I don't necessarily regret what happened, especially that was during a time that a lot of these alternatives were just now coming up. But there are alternatives, and these are not just good alternatives. These are not just similar alternatives, but quite frankly, these are better alternatives. Again, you have the example of Bobby Chu went and did a he did a demonstration or a talk at Ringling College or SCAD or the art school up in Toronto or Art Center. But he has an online class called Schoolism. He has a YouTube channel that you can easily go and take a look at some of his demonstrations. Those cost a lot cheaper, probably I believe a few $100s per year versus $20,000 to $30,000 per 2 to 3 months, which could easily come to about $60,000 or more per year when you could get the same education or better from that person. The second reason why alternatives are better is that they are far more focused, and you do not have to fight to get a teacher that is comparable to both you as a personality and to the industry that you're working in. So as I had mentioned earlier, you have the problem of, yes, we are an illustration major, but what if I want to do concept art for games? What if I want to do children's books? What if I want to do editorial illustration? What if I want to do what I end up actually doing towards the end of my schooling years and had to self-taught? But what if I want to do surface design and fashion design? All of these require someone that knows how to draw, but they all require very distinct and different things. And that is why going with these alternatives are better for you because, for example, I'm sure you guys are on YouTube. You've heard of them sponsoring a lot of YouTubers, but you have the online, a little class called Skillshare. And on Skillshare, they have them all categorized out and different, and it costs about $15 a month. You can watch as many channels as you like, and you can look for something very specific. So in my case, I do surface design. I can go on Skillshare and there's probably 5 to 10 surface design classes. Or I want to learn how to use watercolor. You can go on Skillshare and learn all techniques of watercolor. You of course are on YouTube. You can Google YouTube and search for a lot of things that's very specific to you. You want to do video editing, you can look it up on YouTube or Skillshare. There's other online academic classes such as Udemy, lynda.com still is in existence. There's a number of them, but you know what is also awesome about that? Your taxes. You see, your taxes, your local taxes actually pays for your local library. And if you look up your local library, a lot of times they already have the subscription to these online classes. So maybe go up into your library and see if you can have access to downloadable courses or to places like lynda.com, because you already are paying for it. So why bother? Also, while at the library, another alternative is, of course, there is a number of DVDs ready out there, from drawing anatomy to game design to animation to photography. And of course, that's not even including all of the videos and magazine subscriptions that your local library is already having. So there's just so many alternatives that, quite frankly, you don't need to go to art school. Now, the one thing that a lot of times people do mention, the reason why they want to go to art school is that, one, they want to be surrounded by like-minded people, and two, they want to have the discipline to improve. Well, I have you covered there. Let's say, besides like online forums or whatnot, maybe you really want to be around other people. Do you know that a number of these online courses do host live workshops? You are able to just go ahead and sign up for SVS meetup groups. One Fantastic Week has I believe a week-long meetup group where you stay together, sit together, and paint together. You have EluxCon, and there's so many where, if that is what you want, where you want to have a hand-on-hand instruction to go and be around like-minded people and learn to network, it'll cost you probably anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 for that 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long. There's of course cheaper ones, usually $200 to $500 for, let's say, a 2-day workshop, and you're not taking away 4 years of your life, and you already get that experience. But ultimately, there's that one thing that I don't think people really mention. Let's say you really still want to be at that art school. Well, both SCAD and Ringling, to my knowledge, have summer sessions and they have evening classes. you can go ahead and sign on for a 2 or 3 week evening class for $1,000. You get the 2 to 4 hours a week for 2, 3, even 4 weeks. And it's only going to cost you anywhere for a few $100s to maybe $1,000 or $2 to still be going to that same art school, being taught more often than not by the same teachers, and not having to pay so much money and so much time. At the end of it all, guys, it's really about how much time you put into it and how many hours that you just sit at the table and do the work. Art school in and of itself will not make you that much better. So anyhow, I hope this video was, helpful to you guys. I do have a number of other videos that hopefully you find of interest. If you have a particular topic you'd like me to talk about, please leave a comment or any questions below in the comment sections. If you found this video particularly helpful, please share it with others. Perhaps you can, help them avoid a horrible price tag or debt. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video about art school alternatives and my experiences with them. All the best. Talk to you later.